Okay, wonderful. So I think we might as well start. The first speaker today is John Anker. He's a professor of international strategy and associate dean in the Huddersfield Business School in the UK. It's near Leeds, in case you were wondering. He got his PhD from the University of Manchester. And apart from academia, one thing that's really of great interest of John is that he's had extensive involvement in public service as a municipal councillor and governor of secondary, special and primary schools. So he's very much involved in the community. And John's research is wide range. It's also devoted to the implication of Brexit, of all things, but that's perhaps for another discussion. Today he'll be sharing some thoughts on online teaching and learning in the COVID era. So thank you, John, for joining us, and the imaginary floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry that I'm not able to talk about Brexit today, but we haven't got enough time. So instead, I will stick to the theme and talk about online teaching and learning in the COVID era. So what I'm going to say very much relates to the experience that we've had in the University of Huddersfield Business School. One thing you need to understand is that our virtual learning environment at Huddersfield is called Brightspace. So I will refer to Brightspace a number of times. We used to operate on Blackboard, which is probably the most common virtual learning platform, but we now operate on Brightspace. So all the materials that our students have are supposed to be deposited on Brightspace. Some modules that we deliver are now face-to-face with some online learning, and some are fully online. So there's a variation in what we do. We use Microsoft Teams like we're doing today for live classes. So synchronous teaching, so teaching taking place at a particular point in time, is delivered by Microsoft Teams. And all our academic staff, all our teaching staff, have undertaken very significant training over the summer about virtual delivery. When the pandemic started in March, or it started in the UK in March, we closed down the campus for face-to-face delivery quite quickly, within about a week, following 2 changes in government policy. And so what then took place at the end of the last academic year was very much an emergency sort of arrangement. But we recognised, like other universities in all countries, that we would have to be prepared to have a lot of online delivery in the new academic year, so the academic year that we've now started. And so all our staff have been undertaking training about online delivery, and the university created a module for online training, which is called MIMO, or Managing Your Module Online. And it's estimated this takes about 40 hours to complete. And indeed, I would agree with that estimate from my own experience of doing the training. So this is an important development in the university, so requiring our staff to go through this program. And their workload allowance has been adjusted to allow for the fact that it is compulsory to take this training program. So we have had some other very significant changes at the University of Huddersfield and our business school. So the University of Huddersfield for bachelor programs has operated on a 3-term year basis. So some UK universities have a 3-term year and some operate the semester system. But Huddersfield is one of the UK universities which has the 3-term year. So for bachelor programs, that's how the delivery would be. But one of the difficulties with the 3-term year in the online environment is that it would have meant that we would have had to have online material prepared for modules taking place through the whole of the academic year very quickly. So we decided in the business school for our bachelor programs to semesterize the system so that modules would be delivered over 2 semesters, and therefore that the preparation requirement would be reduced. So we would only have to prepare for the first semester, the one that we're now in, and the preparation for the second semester could take place at a slightly later date. So the pattern of delivery has changed. And what we have on the slide is just an example for a bachelor module in strategic management. So strategy is my subject field. So instead of having class contact of 48 hours distributed in the way that's indicated, the 48 hours of class contact would be distributed in a different way. And this is a very fundamental change. So not only are we moving our teaching online, but we're also restructuring the delivery of the programs as a result of COVID. And the online delivery, as I said earlier, the synchronous delivery is delivered by Microsoft Teams. So that's a very significant change. One of the other key learning lessons is that if you're delivering a lecture, say, for 1 hour, which is our typical sort of teaching time, then the way in which material is delivered has to change in the online environment. So it's different if you're a learner or a student observing an online lecture than if you're observing it face to face. So there are some advantages and some disadvantages. So the chief disadvantage of watching material online is that the concentration factor is probably more difficult. The advantage, of course, of online is that because these sessions are recorded, like today's activity, the student is able to go back to the material and to re-examine it at their own speed. So there are advantages and disadvantages. So we need to change, or we've had to change, the expectations of our students, of our learners, about what they can expect. So they can learn at their own pace, so that's an advantage, as I've already said. But a negative is that they can't necessarily ask questions in the same context as they would if it was a face-to-face session. So preparation in advance is always important for students, of course, and something that we like to happen if we're teachers, but it's even more important in the online context, or they won't benefit from the material which is being delivered. So not only do we have lectures online, but we also have some of our tutorials online, and the tutorials, or seminars as they may be called sometimes, are meant to be interactive, so that's where the preparation is particularly important. So some tips. We're recommended in our training to break things down, so things should be broken down into small chunks of material. And secondly, we should use a variety of methods for delivery. So that's very good advice, but one of the problems with that is if you end up with a large number of separate sections, it looks a bit intimidating for students, for learners, if they've got to examine 100 or 86, as I put there, little bite-sized portions. So there are some advantages and disadvantages arising from the online system. So one of the, this is a tip for using our virtual learning environment, but the tip could apply to any virtual learning environment like Blackboard or the one that you're using, is that you have in effect 2 tabs open at the same time. So in one you observe the online session, and in the second one you can stop it and you can make amendments, and you can make notes of where you want to go back to it afterwards. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Realise this is a very short session, but that perhaps gives you some idea of the very fundamental change at the University of Huddersfield in terms of the structure of our programs. So it's not just delivery, but it's the structure of our programs which have been changed. And as a result of the change in delivery, we've had some very substantial learning requirements on our side as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, John, for a very interesting presentation. There's a number of aspects I liked about it and I want to ask you about. So hopefully we'll have time during the discussion. But let me now proceed to our second presenter, which is Katuna Picada. So she's coming up next. If we can get her into the window, please. So Katuna, would you like to load your presentation now?
Sure.
Just share your screen.
You can see that, right?
Wonderful.
Okay.
So let me tell you a little bit about Katuna. She is Associate Professor and Supervisor of the Bachelor's Education Program in European Studies at the Georgian Technical University. And you might be wondering, this is in Georgia near Tbilisi. Do I pronounce it correctly? Tbilisi?
Yeah.
And she received her PhD in political science from that university, but she's also been affiliated with the American University, San Diego State University, Georgia. And today she'll be sharing her experience with online teaching from both institutions. So without further ado, Katuna, it's great to have you with us. We look forward to your thoughts and tips.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. To the organizers, thanks a lot. I should mention just very briefly that I was part of the very wonderful program in 2015, already some 5 years ago, under the program of Infinity. So I was having very great stay in Ostrava actually by those times. Yeah. So let me just very quickly perhaps go through not the situation associated with COVID-19, but it was important that since the very first cases which occurred by the end of February of this year, practically all the schools and all the universities immediately switched to the distance learning, online learning, and actually San Diego State University was the very first one, the Georgian campus of this university, which switched directly to the online teaching. I have had this great opportunity to be part of that and actually kind of trying to practically establishing, some kind of a new practice when it was for a short time uncertain, let's say, period to deal with these problems. You see the president of Georgia, Salome Zurabishvili, here and her her campaign, Safety Not Fair, since the very start of the cases of COVID-19. She appears in a bus or something in public, as we see here in a public gathering. I believe it's a photo actually from the very early times of COVID-19. Now, right now we have a little challenging, much more situation actually starting from this September. That the numbers of the infected people are increasing tremendously. So per day can be like over 500 people, which is really something like a big change, because we had several, people throughout the whole practically spring and summer. But I don't want to really take much more time about that. I should mention that, of course, we've learned a lot of things from this pandemic, not only apparently from this negative point of view, but also, constructively, I can say, right, to be much more creative in terms of establishing some new practices, of course, employing different new technologies, right? So in terms of LMS, learning management system, or could be the different, of course, formats of delivery. Quite often what we do use, we see here just the effect of the empty classrooms. Quite often in Georgia, it's been perceived as a great disturbance, right, for the kids in secondary schools as well as in the universities. Of course, that is very true. The people, when they just lack the capability of social contact and be socialized, just being social and gathering, they have already kind of a trauma, right? So it of course affects in different ways also the capabilities from the side of the student, but also from the side of professors. One of the biggest challenges I can speak of in regards of Georgia is, of course, among the colleagues, also some problems with adapting to the new technologies, right? Not only the older people. Of course, the effects like of online teaching when you just study some gymnastics or something like that, or sports activities. Even though I can say, even on the example of my own family, that that our kid was actually learning karate, some physical, you know, he was trained physically, and then he could actually do quite brilliant in some competition after we had some much more calm periods in the late spring from COVID. Of course, we can, when we speak about the distance learning, even though there are a lot of course, advantages, a lot of opportunities in technological terms, so we have to speak about perhaps some of the Georgian, and I believe Georgia is not an exclusion, about the problem of lacking, you know, access from the side of actually from quite a lot of people, a lot of children just having this kind of a lack of access to the technologies, right, which are necessary for adapting to this distance mode. Different problems associated with perhaps the connectivity problem, perhaps lack of resources, once again the physical materials, I mean books literally, and or different skills which are necessary. Of course, there are some fields which are very problematic, right? As I mentioned, some physical, let's say, training and the exercises for the medical students, medicine students, I believe that it can be very hard to actually learn something, you know, connected with the medical profession, to do some surgeries, you know, get prepared for all these things. These are some excerpts from my online classes. I do, as well as San Diego State University and also Technical University of Georgia, pretty much using as a major delivery mode, Zoom, with all its functions, and I think everybody loves it, and I for sure also opt for this system, even though we do use Cisco and WebEx and some other also delivery modes, also on Canvas, which is the studio, you know, just uploading the videos, recording, uploading videos there. Once again, this is the excerpt from the video when I was conducting the
Katuna, can
yes.
you please put your slides on the presentation mode, because we can only see your first slide. So
oh,
I think
really?
you need to put, you need to put them in the presentation mode.
I think, I'm sorry, 1 second. I could be just checking what's going on here. Yeah, we should be just saying that. That's what I was showing.
So you have about 4 more minutes.
Okay,
so
let me go through for some perhaps the major, just continue with the major ideas and which I want to show you. I was speaking about different modes of and means of delivery, as well as different LMSs, right? And I've already mentioned that quite hugely we just do Zoom and Zooming, which I call Zoomification even. But there are different problems, like with Zoom attacks I've experienced actually some couple of times, this kind of a Zoom bombing, but there are different security issues you can actually go through and employ with that. Of course, there are quite often what is about the quizzes and different, I mean, technology still and technical means how you do the quizzing, for instance. I find as a very perfect tool, for instance, PlayPosit video and quizzing, which allows the students to just enjoy the videos, but at the same time to be kind of asked the questions, and they can't proceed unless they actually answer all the questions. It was mentioned already, Blackboard. We at San Diego State University were using pretty massively Blackboard, which is incorporated very successfully employed by the San Diego State University. But we switched actually from this semester massively to Canvas, which is another great LMS, and I'm pretty much enjoying. There are different opportunities to work with, including actually the studio, which I mentioned, where you can record and upload the videos. Something about perhaps just considering the lack of time, plagiarism tool, which is being used quite massively also by our universities, and I personally also prefer Turnitin, which makes things easier, I think, to check academic honesty and just prevent subsequently academic dishonesty. But what I like also, and I will be finishing very soon, it's the approach and the whole framework of the concept, which has been promoted, especially this summer by the Flexible Course Design Summer Institute, provided by the San Diego State University in July 2020. It had this great emphasis on the approach, which is accessibility and universal design for learning. Just make the materials and all of the opportunities for all the students equitably and equally accessible, right? And it's a huge work in terms of the materials. Quite often, even for instance, when we're working on Canvas and you uploading just files, it just shows you the levels, how accessible it is to everybody. For instance, for the visually impaired students and all other students with disabilities. Here we have this perhaps different, notes about the about showing the level of accessibility. Practically, yeah, I don't know. I think I've omitted some things, but I try to fit some time, considering also some technical issue in the middle. Thank you very much. I would love to hear the questions, of course, from the audience. Thanks a lot, dear colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Katuna. We appreciate your input. Am I mistaken in saying that you'll have to leave in about 2 minutes to do some teaching, so no, you won't be able to?
Let me just make some update about this. I've had a class, but I've just moved this class, so no worries about that. So I can be staying for the discussion.
Wonderful, that's great news. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, the third speaker up is Daniela Andren. Can I just please have you, Daniela, to upload your presentation? Let me tell you a little bit about Daniela as she's doing that. She's Associate Professor of Economics at the Örebro University School of Business in Sweden. That's kind of halfway between Gothenburg and Stockholm, if I'm not mistaken. She did have PhD at Gothenburg, and her main research interests are labor and health economics, where she's kind of focused on the evaluation of various public policies. So that's very useful now during the COVID era. She's written a number of articles about various public interventions and so on, the labor market, and her current research really focuses on kind of well-being and successful aging. So Daniela, we're really glad to have you with us, and then please take it away.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Could you hear me? Okay, thank you for inviting me here, and I'm pleased to share my experiences and with all of you, and already learn a lot from the other two colleagues who present their experiences. Could you please confirm that you can see my slide?
Yes, yeah, it's all good.
Okay,
we can
and
see
now
the slide
we'll
and the
see
next
if
slide
we can,
as well.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's important to find out, can you see this new slide on the screen?
That's right, yes,
COVID-19?
we can.
Yes, perfect. Then my presentation will be focused on experiences related to teaching and learning during the COVID-19, and almost like my colleagues previously presented, is very important to have in mind how did we start this experience. For several years, my university moved online, the administration of all courses, and we use also the learning platform Blackboard to communicate with students, to store all teaching materials, to download assignment work, to grade assignment work. Many of these elements were very useful when we have to handle the situation created by COVID-19. We also, for several years, used different teaching methods, which were really useful now. We have both Canvas for recording our teaching and flipped classrooms, which now were very useful to be used under a very short time period. Also, for one element, what I'm going to present later on, it was very important that we use for more than 10 years a screening of everything what is produced by student in written form and submitted for examination, a plagiarism screening done via a platform what is named Urkund. And also since 2018, we had intensively tried to implement digital exams, which unfortunately were not developed in such a way that we could switch directly to them, but some of the courses already have been used to this form of examination. So this was for several years, and what happened in March 17, the government of Sweden took the decision with strong recommendation that all universities, all institutions at higher education level should shift the teaching and learning in remote form. And of course, is the parenthesis here because, as you already know, all of you, Swedish policies and the way of handling this, especially the policy of stopping the spreading of the virus was different from other countries. And this means while the school in the primary education are open, even though the digitalization is very much implemented, the high schools and the university were advised to move totally online. Okay, this implies that, like was mentioned previously, even in Sweden, there were not activities in the campus the first weeks, but during the spring, especially in end of April, May, when we got other recommendations, students could start to meet and come back to the campus in small groups. Now to summarize, we are prepared for some of the tasks, but the teaching and the moving is not me. Some of you should unmute their microphones. Okay.
That's a good example of a negative externality, isn't it?
Exactly. Thank you very much. Okay. We also, the teachers and the students, has to adapt to using a method of communication which was actually live, and it is switching to Zoom. Zoom have been used very much into the research community for and also for the faculty boards and other type of boards at the university. This means a few of the teachers are very used to use Zoom as a platform of communication. However, under the first 2 weeks, all teachers were at home, and for sure, the transition was a little bit difficult for some of them in the beginning, for both teachers and the students, mostly due to technological constraints. What I'm doing now, I will try in a few minutes to summarize what we learned during the spring term, and I will focus to teachers and students. As I said, teachers have usually, the teachers at all university are equipped with laptops which are removable, to say so, from home to job and coming in the job environment. And this means that that was not at all problematic for my university and other university which follow the same model. But still there were a few problems related to the equipment, related to the audio and video, and that was fixed very fast. The teacher could come to the campus and or some receive at home equipment sent to fix this problem. Also very fast, the user support was developed to to help the teachers. And I repeat, in the beginning was a lot of help for teachers, that everything is functioning, and it seems that function. But we should not forget, as already was mentioned before, that implies extra hours of work. And in our case, it was like 25-30 hours of extra work, what was reported by course. And now it's about teaching, giving support, and exams. However, almost all teachers report, sadly, I wrote something less positive, the increasing in cheating. And also this was relatively easy to identify because of our tradition and our obligation to screen everything what is written and sent for examination via a plagiarians program. That we should take all of us with us, that these aspects has to be designed in different way. The students were informed from the beginning, that I also want to share with you, that cheating is not allowed and will be penalized. The students adapted very fast to Zoom. However, that is the big problem. There are two problems. In home environment, they have phones or other digital devices which are updated to date, but less adapted for doing active learning and doing more actively, like via laptop instead of using a phone. It was not, almost all students could attend lectures via their telephone. That was not problem, mobile phone. But when we have to do something online actively, it was less successful. We learn very fast. Another less positive element was the user support was almost moved totally in the beginning to the student center, and students didn't get enough support related to Blackboard, Zoom, and digital exams. However, this was fixed during the summer, and now we have short films what shows students how to get connected, how to fix problems. We also developed a bank of question and answers, which students actually can take it as the first help. And also the most important, during the summer, we work out together with the student union, a pool of mentors, students who are helping students. And that is coming to help another issue, which actually students in very big percent, in some groups up to 80%, they are missing working together, and they are missing the social connection with their peers. And it seems that the mentors succeed now. I got the first, we start teaching in September, and already I collect new data, and I see very clear that these less positive, important events are less frequent today. We believe that because we already have some active learning modules online with quizzes and bonus points, this seems to be a kind of insurance in the case that we need to do without a lot of time, new preparation. And interactive teaching during Zoom, we learned that it's very important to teach in small interval, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then leave 10 minutes for question, or try to involve the students in the teaching, because it is the expectation that we expect that we are live together, but is not always the case. And this is the reason having question and answers and pools of questions, asking multiple choice questions or question with alternative false true helps a lot. Lessons what we learn, and we already have, but we still that when we return face-to-face learning, it seems that a lot of this material could be used to develop much better for other courses, the flipped classroom, and also the lecture which were provided remotely and were recorded might be used in the case that one teacher cannot attend when we move back to campus because of the bad weather, which sometimes we have, transport problem, and so on. And also these quizzes, what we were developing to help students to stay with us when we are live. Like now, I will take up one question and ask to say, should I stop? Maybe I should stop soon.
Yeah, maybe another minute or so.
Thank you. Excellent. Very good. I got it. And in that idea is that getting feedback from the students is very useful. And now getting this. Okay. In our work about organizing and communicating the move to online teaching and learning, I think that we should not forget about user perspective, that there are 3 groups here involved, and they should, all of them, we have equal treatment about information and full information. Student, teacher, administration, this should be very clear, identify and implemented. And it's the same with the user support and later on with the user involvement. Thank you for your attention and questions. I think that I'm done in time, right?
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Daniela. Thank you for your contribution. So please stick around. There's one more presentation, which happens to be mine. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, although self-presentation is probably not what I should be performing. But anyway, I have this double life. I've had a continuing position at La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia since 2005. But over the last 7 years, I've also been affiliated with the VŠB Technical University Ostrava, which is my hometown. So I've been here for the past 7 years. I've been spending 6 months in Australia and 6 months in the Czech Republic. So what I'm going to share with you now is some kind of experience and tips that I've got from the first 6 months while I was in Australia. 3 very brief topics that I want to talk about. The key one is probably how to engage students online. And there are 2 ways that I've tried to do that. One is through Zoom classes, and the other one is through designing LMS in the learning management system in a kind of more interactive way. As LMS at La Trobe University, we use Moodle. So, and why do I talk about the importance of discussion and engagement? I think this is really important, and I always, in every class, I tell my students, they see this slide, I tell them, look guys, if you really want to learn effectively, you need to talk. You can't just listen, because there's a lot of research coming out that, when we talk, our brain does a very different, much deeper type of thinking. And for example, in this book, what they did is that they looked at how much students actually remember just after 2 days of learning something. And it's really minuscule. It's only about 10% of what you've read. So, if students study from a textbook, that's not very effective at all, and then they forget. However, if they discuss the material with their classmates, they're up to about 70%, and if they actually try to teach someone else, they're up to about 95%. So it's really important to engage students and have interaction in the classes, even in an online environment. So what I'm going to show you is this subject that I'm teaching at the moment while I'm here. It's called Climate Change Economics and Policy. This is what the page looks like. There's a number of things, these introductory videos and news forum and so on. I'm just going to share a few tips. One thing that really worked for me is this icebreaker. So at the start of the semester, I basically got the students to introduce themselves and tell me why this is an elective, so why they chose the subject, and also what they think about current climate policy, and why they think policymakers are maybe not doing as much as they could. And I also got them to come up with a text for this cartoon. And it was really great to see, you know, dozens and dozens of students to actually, you know, come up with some ideas and introducing themselves. So I think it's a really good start of the semester where people get to know each other. Now, I also have this, to make the subject a bit more relevant from the real world perspective and link all the material to current events, I always post these interesting links from the media. So these are just some examples, and they're all related to climate change. And I always invite the students to read the article online and basically tell others what they think, or if they have any questions, suggestions, and so on. So this is, I think, a very important aspect of this interaction. I mean, this is how it's broken into different modules and so on. I think I don't have to talk about it. This is an example of a module in 1 week. So there's some learning outcomes that, you know, some activities that the students are supposed to do. There's some videos, lots of reading, there's revision questions. This last link, additional resources, if you click on that, you would find different videos and media articles for the students that want to get a bit of a deeper understanding. And then every 3 weeks we have this knowledge checklist, which is the week when we have assessed activities. So there's always a Zoom session at the start where the students can ask questions, and then they have a problem set where they submit answers to some questions. So this goes back to what Daniela was talking about the flipped classroom. They're supposed to do some work, and then they can come back and discuss whether they have any questions or what they can learn. And there's also a quiz subsequently. In terms of the assignments, we use Turnitin for submissions. As you know, it kind of checks for plagiarized articles. So this is kind of what it looks like. Yeah, the different platforms. There's also online quizzes. So this is a typical question. You can have figures and tables, and you can ask questions, and the students just submit. So there's a way for the students to get a bit of a feedback on how they're going. But what I want to talk about more is the way that the lectures and the classes are run. We at La Trobe, we're getting a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous types. So some lectures are pre-recorded. There's a few examples here. For example, this is one of my colleagues used Camtasia. So you see the lecture in a small window, and then you see the slides, but there's many different ways of doing it. Or if you have the real-time classes, we also use Zoom, which I find really useful. As you see, there's 124 students engaged, and many of them actually ask questions. This is quite handy. It's obviously being recorded for the students who can't attend in real time. And here you can really engage with the students. So there's two ways of doing it. One of them is through these polls. So every class I would prepare at least 4 or 5 different polls. So the students get a question, and then they can basically vote, and it's all anonymous, so they don't have to be afraid that, you know, they will give the wrong answer. They can just see whether their understanding is correct, and then we get this output, which basically shows you, you know, what people have thought, and then me as the lecturer can kind of discuss the options, you know, why it's wrong and why it's correct. So this is I think really useful, and it breaks up the momentum. My rule is to never talk for more than 5 minutes straight. So you always talk for no more than 5 minutes, and then I flip it and give the students an opportunity to think, to reflect, to talk, to ask questions. The key way to do that is the breakout rooms in Zoom. So you can break the students out into the rooms. You can, you know, move them from room to another room, and I always give them a question to discuss, and then they basically discuss it for 3, 4, 5 minutes in that room, and then they come back to the main Zoom room and report back, you know, essentially present what they discussed, and then again I talk and we have a discussion. So it's really, the idea is to have more interactive classes. I just talked about the lecture, but in fact, in terms of the tutorials, there's even more interaction. There should be very little talking by the tutor and a lot more talking by the students, either in the breakout rooms or in the main room. So I think I've probably run out of time now, but thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy your learning and teaching. And we can now come back to general discussion. So we're running for time, 52 minutes. So I was thinking maybe we can, if there are any questions from the audience, we can open it up and answer some questions from the audience. Karel, do we have some questions for the audience for any of our panelists? And then after we answer these, we can come back and have the panelists ask questions to one another if they have any.
Hello, we got two questions. Question number one is what kind of online activities are really beneficial from the perspective of your students and from the perspectives of your teachers? So it's probably a question for all.
Okay, this is a great question. If I may ask any of the presenters, Daniela, John, or Katuna, just very brief answer, maybe a couple of minutes, 1 or 2 minutes. Daniela, would you like to start?
Yes, I already started to answer because I didn't know the rules to that question. I already answered in the chat. And actually, I summarized before your presentation, suggesting that students really appreciate working in small groups and coming back and discussing the group's findings. And it might be a question to be discussed. It might be some kind of, because we have, for example, in economics and econometrics, we use a lot programming in order to estimate one equation, for example. And even into this setting, they like very much to find their solution in groups and come back. That they appreciate, but do not forget that that is given that it's working. And that seems that it's a problem now, given that the students didn't meet each other face to face and do not know each other. This collaboration might not work always, but that is one. And also was mentioned, and I also mentioned this asking questions during Zoom lectures. It's also very much appreciated by some students. They feel that they are active and they learn much more via this pool of questions. And yes, it's good to be after 10-15 minutes of teaching. Thank you for me. I think that the others will like also to share.
Okay, wonderful. Can we, John, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you think, which activities are the most useful for students?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jan. I don't think that it's possible really to identify particular types of activity as being more beneficial for all students or all teachers. I think it depends very much on individuals' learning styles. So some people appreciate different types of activities more than others. So some people learn through a more didactic process where it's information which is given, which they find most beneficial, and other people prefer engagement in different ways through quizzes, simulations, or that sort of thing. I think what is important in the delivery online and the opportunity which is provided by online as well, which is not there with face-to-face, is that it's easier to have a variety of activities with which students can engage. So I think online offers a big advantage in terms of the variety of activities which can be provided for learning. The disadvantage of online from both students and teachers is that engagement is harder because sitting in front of a screen for the whole class is more tiring than just being in a classroom usually. And secondly, it demands more self-discipline and personal organisation. And obviously some students are better at that than others. So I think online offers a variety of possibilities, but we do need also to be aware of the other requirements associated with learning online.
Okay, thank you. Katuna, your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for this question. I think that's really important. I mean, the perspectives from the side of teachers, or lecturers, and students, but students first of all. I do think that they might enjoy really different things. But what I found kind of universally, I think, joyful, let's say, what they enjoy is quite often to use some Google Forms, or it was mentioned already about the Zoom polls, you know, and the stuff like these different sorts of quizzes. Yeah. And yeah, well, what I find also quite interesting, actually, that I started right now this semester, especially I massively started to use some discussion boards, you know, which can be assessed. So you can assess the inputs in discussion of the topics, and especially for such a subject which can be, for instance, associated with political science, American politics, and California politics, for instance, first year CG students as well, or urban politics class, whatever. Yeah, discussing things, initiating discussion, and give this to contribute. I mean, for the contribution of this from the side of the students, but also quite challenging is that one practice which I also try to right now to kind of implement, which is connected with peer assessment. It's a little, I think, controversial. I've heard different points of view about that, but to assign, you know, students to check maybe each other's also writings and work, and maybe give some feedback, can be also helpful for realizing, at least from the side of the students, and assess their actually, yeah, their I mean, the products and then the fruits which they gain from this process. From the lecturer's perspective, I do enjoy actually many things doing online, and I can say that practically I do not have any kind of problems in general, and any kind of hindering factors I don't really see during the online courses. So of course, if you ask me, I do miss the big, especially the classrooms and everything, you know, in physical terms, and keeping in touch, being in touch with the students in one physical space, perhaps, and sharing this space with them. But in general, it's so diverse. So we are having a lot of opportunities. So it's practically, I mean, I do enjoy many things, but for sure much more interactive classes, and not something much more monologous. Quite often I do use also and try to incorporate different movies sometimes, and videos and audios. I do show during the class, and then ask the questions and organize quizzes about this. So okay. There are diverse ways. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks very much. I just want to briefly follow up on that. I mentioned some of those earlier, but when you mentioned peer assessment, I've experimented with this in one of my classes, and it worked out quite well. And one of the feedback that I received, so the students were supposed to submit a task, and then it was randomly assigned to one of their classmates, and a part of the assessment was for the task, a part of the assessment was for the peer assessment, for the peer review. And one of the feedback, some of the feedback I received was that it was really interesting for the students, you know, having to actually mark somebody else was a really good learning experience, because they realized all the things that they did wrong themselves in the assignment. So yeah, I really want to do a bit more on that, although it's difficult to manage logistically. I think it's really useful for students to have to evaluate both themselves and other people's work. But anyway, can we go back to some more questions, if we have any from the audience?
Yes, there is one more question. It was written for John, because he mentioned that their lessons, lectures are shorter now, and he presented some numbers of lectures and tutorials. So there is a question if it applies to all modules or courses at his school, or is it just for some of them? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The position in the school and in the university is that all large lectures, the formal large lectures, are online because the requirements of social distancing make it impossible to have large lecture groups in a lecture theatre. So all lectures are online, but other classes, seminars or tutorials may be taking place in a variety of ways. So some of our seminars or tutorials are face-to-face, and some of them are online. And where they're online, they will normally be taking place on a synchronous basis, so in real time, so they're timetabled, and it's expected that students attend. In other cases, in all modules, there's also asynchronous material, so students can look into it in their own time. So there's both synchronized, synchronous, and asynchronous or non-timetabled activity. So the synchronous seminars and tutorials are similar in content to the face-to-face. It's just that they're being delivered differently. And the reason why some modules have face-to-face seminars and some have online synchronous seminars is not really an academic reason. It's to do with the management of the student timetable. So we're guaranteeing that all our students, at least at the moment, while the pandemic is under control, all our students will be guaranteed some face-to-face time, because, as you know, education is not just about material, it's a social experience. But obviously in the classroom at the moment, the capacity has been very much reduced because of the need for physical distancing between students and also between students and the teachers. So this means that we do not have the capacity to operate as many classroom sessions as we did previously. So the number of classroom sessions in total is reduced. So we have this sort of mixed system where some modules have face-to-face seminars and some have online seminars, but it's purely a management of space issue. It isn't really an education issue. The choice of modules to have face-to-face is made largely on logistical grounds, not on educational grounds, but we are guaranteeing that all our students are having some face-to-face element. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'd like to follow up on that. You mentioned that you have these sessions, so it's like a 1 hour session, and then you also leave time for for the students to watch a video and then come back. Like, do you think the students actually do that? Do they actually sit there for the hour and do all the activities that you assign to them? And how do you see that, or do you have any information on how much they kind of follow that design?
The Brightspace system allows for the measurement or the observation of whether or not students are engaged. So it is possible to identify from the virtual learning environment which students are engaging with material and also which material. But it's done in terms of the sections of the Brightspace module site. And this data is available and can be obtained, and indeed is used for a number of purposes. So one of the reasons why it's used is because students who have a visa to enter an educational program, so they're a non-British or non-EU student, so they're from another part of the world, if they have a visa to enter the UK to study on a program, one of the requirements of the visa is that they are actually engaged with the program. And if they were purely face-to-face in the traditional way, we would measure their attendance by conventional means. So they have to register their attendance at classes. But in the online environment, we have to have a new way to measure their attendance or engagement. And so by looking at what they've engaged with in the Brightspace virtual learning environment, we can identify whether our overseas students are behaving in accordance with the requirements of the visa. But we can do this for all students, and we're only now this week in Huddersfield. This is only the second week of proper teaching in this semester or term. But in a couple of weeks, we'll start looking at the data and seeing who's actually engaging. And then the students who are not engaging can be targeted for extra contact. We also have a personal tutor system. So every student gets a personal tutor, which is a member of staff, and they can discuss their progress with them. So the idea is not to look at the academic material or discuss it, but just to discuss their general progress and whether they're having difficulty. And if they need specialist support, they can be referred for specialist support elsewhere in the university. So I hope I've answered your question, Jan.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you. Are there any other questions, Karel, that you would like to pose? Or, I have a. Yeah, go ahead, please.
There's one more from Milos. If you think that we can learn from the online learning experience we are currently having for when things return to normal. So what sort of we can use when the standard times or the past times come back.
That is a really good. I think it goes back to what Daniela was talking about. She mentioned that that there are some things that we can take away from this environment. So very briefly, would anybody like to follow up on that?
Okay, I can start and repeat, in other words, what already I said. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we learn, and all of us said different kind of issues. What I didn't mention about this learning, how I summarize these lessons, we actually organize a lot of web surveys with the students and the teachers, and try to ask specific questions, in some cases giving a lot of multiple choice to click in as alternatives. And this we identify from both teachers and students what, and this is after from March to the beginning of June experience. Because we want to be able to learn from what we have. And it seems that especially teachers, which under normal circumstances couldn't be in the class and teach the class and have to have another colleague to teach the class, or the class has to be postponed. They find they really wanted to have this alternative, that at least the recording of the lecture could be used for the students and then build on. Here I would like to come back to the end of our panel related to recording, because we have some legal aspects into recording at some universities in Sweden, and perhaps in other countries they are not there. But anyway, that it is the fact that if it is a recording material of the classes, they might be processed and improved and make it better and reused. And also we learn from the students this, which maybe some of us already did, that students really appreciate if it is possible to the teaching to be organized in short modules of 10-15 minutes, and then little space for question and answers, or whatever contact with the students. What we already mentioned, that we use the pool of questions or give them some quiz or whatever. These are kind of activities what we already developed we have and we might improve. But the majority of answers from both teachers and students at my university about what you will keep and what you would like to have in the case that we come back 100% to campus, where is this to here were the majority of answers. That also I would like to mention what John was saying about how we can we cannot make inference for all kind of courses. I would like to mention that the results, what I summarize, are from students at business school, which study economics, statistics, business administration, or informatics. And this means they're not their courses, which most of them are quantitative. But I agree that the variation is so huge and it's difficult to draw, to make causal inference about what is better or less good to apply for each and every course. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree that there's a number of ways that number of things we can learn from that experience, and we should be listening to the students what it is that they actually like and don't like about this setup. Are there any questions that you would like to, the presenters would like to ask each other or follow up, because we're running out of time, so we probably have another few minutes, maybe last one or two questions. Is there anything or anything you would like to add on any of the topics that we discussed today? Katuna, your mic is on mute.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I will just make some follow-up. I just wanted to add actually that during just very general classes even, I can compare when I was just thinking through these things, and of course based on experience what we are having from this COVID-19, practically I can say, for instance, I can take this example of Slido, the tool Slido, which is a very great application for interactive teaching. I was pretty much, for instance, using in a very big classes for SDSUG students with very short quizzes, interactive quizzes, whenever they have to poll and answer. It's pretty it's pretty entertaining for them, and I think they like these kind of things in the terms of you know, of getting this much more energy just and put the yeah, much more interaction into the going lecturing to make it yeah, I think the major thing is about interaction, to increase interaction. Perhaps what I experience much more and the students are really enjoying, I think it's interaction, and it's, I think, quite doable in absolutely usual classroom using different technologies. Again, also, and LMSs, of course, we in general do use LMSs in for general, absolutely face-to-face learning, right? Because we are uploading different materials, so we are giving the quizzes and assignments, and even, you know, the papers, right? They have to submit through the Turnitin, for instance, anti-plagiarism tool. So I don't really think that there are very, you know, huge differences actually. So it can be, a lot of things can be absolutely incorporated into this face-to-face. And yeah, perhaps this would be the switch of the space once again on spaces, but overall it looks like that we have, yeah, a lot of opportunities. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Look, I agree with you, and I one thing I would add is the flexibility. I think that's something that the students really enjoy. I mean, the fact that they can, you know, watch the video later, they can, you know, attend the class wearing their pajamas, or they can, you know, there's a number of kind of flexible modes. So I think that's really something that we should take away. But anyway, I think we might bring it to an end. Thank you, guys, for your contributions. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Katuna. Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure having you and chatting about online learning. Let's just hope it'll be useful to some people, and us academics as well as the students will enjoy this experience. Hopefully, we'll be able to come back to face-to-face learning in the near future, but until then, let's wish ourselves luck, and thanks again. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye-bye.